5. Oh, thank you very much, Craig. First of all, do I have any apologies?
Just apologies from Councillor Dinser and Councillor Hassel.
Thank you very much. We note Councillor Dinser's apologies, but for very good reason. We would like, as a Cabinet, to extend our congratulations to him on becoming a granddad again. Thank you. Item 2, any late items?
There's no formal late items. It might just be worth mentioning, though, that there were 2 addendums added after the reports were published. So the first addendum is for item 11, sale of land on Groseberry Drive, and it's just an additional graphic which is meant to give clarity around the geography and the extent of the housing. And then there's an addendum for item 18, council plan refresh, which is the equality impact assessment, which should be appendix 2.
Thank you for clarifying that, Craig. Item 3, receipt of petitions. Do we have any?
No petitions.
Okay. Item 4, identification of urgent items to which call-in will not apply.
None.
And item 5, any declarations of interest? Nope. Okay, we're all happy. Item 6, the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of January 2024. Cabinet, are we happy that they are a reflection of the meeting? Thank you, Councillor Heselgrave. That's moved. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Kozlowski. Okay, item 7, recommendations from Exec Scrutiny Board, which I have, and we will take along with each item. So on to the key decisions. Item 8 is the proposed development of a site at Blackmore Street, Derby, formerly known as Grange Avenue, Derby. I know that Councillor Khan is not feeling terribly well today, so he's asked me to present this item on his behalf. So this report is seeking to approve a revised programme, budget and contractual approval dates for a site on Blackmore Street in the Normanton ward of Derby. It's also seeking the necessary delegations to enter into contract to deliver the project. The site has planning in place for 36 bungalows, 6 one-bed, 27 two-bed and 3 three-beds, all with off-road parking. These new homes would become part of the council stock and they would be managed by Derby Homes. The project would be funded through the HRA and right to buy receipts or alternative grant funding if any became available within the delivery timescale. The budget has been increased due to a number of reasons as set out in the report. An amended drainage system required by Severn Trent has resulted in level changes across the site, needing retaining walls. The level changes mean site accommodation and storage will need to be moved around the site as work progresses, which extends the contract period needed. Other project tenders received showed significant cost increases in utility services. The road has been altered to achieve an adoptable standard, so Severn Trent can adopt and maintain the drainage system. And we've found services which were not showing on the service plans provided, so we've included a sum of money for diversion works if this happens. Other project tenders have had higher contractor prelims, which are a percentage of the construction cost, so we have increased this. To make sure we can be on site to keep our planning permission live, we have invited contractors to submit tenders and they are due back in March. Our programme has a start on site in June 2025 and works complete in November 2026. And once complete, the new homes will be financially protected by the cost floor, i.e. they can't sell for less than we've spent on it. And that has recently increased from 15 to 30 years, as we know. All of the homes include environmental and energy efficient measures which exceed current building standards. So that is good to know. Councillor Khan, is there anything that you wanted to add?
No, just to say that obviously, as you've just read out, this was approved about a year ago, but due to reasons beyond our control, it's taken this long to get. But it is a very nice development site, and it'll be most welcome, particularly with the sort of nearby care home there as well, which is which did offer to share their facilities with residents of this development. But it's a much needed and a very, very good development. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from Cabinet? Councillor Heselgrave.
I welcome this development when housing is badly needed, and particularly housing of the nature specified in this particular item. I'll draw everyone's attention to 10.1 in the report. The purpose of developing new council homes is to provide secure, affordable and high quality homes for people whose housing needs may not be met by the private market. Some of the people on the housing register are among the most disadvantaged in the city, and the proposed use of the land targets support towards these people, and also noting, of course, that there is a massive demand for housing, which we are trying to address as a council with partners around the city to alleviate that problem. But it is an acute problem at the moment, and this will help towards it.
Thank you, Councillor Heselgrave. And in particular, bungalows are in short supply and always high demand, aren't they? Thank you. So just moving on to the Executive Scrutiny Board, the Chair is not here to present the recommendations from the Scrutiny Board today. The Executive Scrutiny Board resolved to note the report and welcome the development. So that's good to hear. Anything from Councillor Prosser?
Very briefly, I think it will be a good development. It is a rough piece of land at the moment that's underused, which is good. I do hesitate on the one hand, though, that it was, I believe, part of the school land, and I don't like schools being broken up. It's a long time since it was part of a school. The school's moved on. But I really don't like developments on school land and asset stripping schools and potential for space that was meant and has been part of a community space. So that part of it I don't like. I know it's been decades in coming together, but it will be a good development, but I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Councillor Prosser. I think asset stripping of a school is probably quite an extreme way of putting it, and as you've pointed out yourself, it's been a long time since the school has used that ground, so you know that's feels a little misleading. Can I just ask if there's any officer comment on that, please?
Yes, Chair, I can do. I mean, I do remember going back years when the school site was there, but generally it's in accordance with DfE policy on surplus places and land, and we will have sought DfE approval at the time when that changes were made to that school. So in that sense, Chair, I think from a policy perspective and DfE approval, it'll be fine.
Thank you, Gamal. Anything else from Cabinet? No? Councillor Heselgrave?
Sorry, I just did want to add as well that it's an ideal location in terms of amenities in the area and schools, so that people can have continuity of education and certainly within a reasonable distance from that location.
Thank you. Okay. So we will go to the recommendations, which is 2.1 to 2.6. Are we all agreed? Okay, thank you very much. On to item 9, the assurance of local authority adult social care services. Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, well, the Care Quality Commission announced its framework for adult social care inspections in May 2023, and Derby's inspection of its adult social care services took place in April 2024, and their report was published in August last year. The overall assessment they gave to Derby was requires improvement, which is actually in line with our own self-assessment. We already had an improvement plan in place with respect to trying to develop the services in adult social care. That plan has been expanded and developed after consultation with frontline staff, care providers, health colleagues, and people who draw on care and support in Derby, principally through two sort of day conferences we held at the cricket ground, actually, called Stronger Together, and that was in December, just before Christmas in 24. There are many challenges in adult social care. I do speak about them frequently, and I know that's often in the local and national press. Not least one of the challenges in adult social care has been the CQC itself and its inspection process. The government has, since the Darby's report, the government has introduced some changes to the Care Quality Commission with an aim to improve the quality of their reports. Despite all the challenges, we are determined to work to continue to improve the care for people in Derby. And so this report, which brings to full council, to the Cabinet, I beg your pardon, the Care Quality Commission report on Derby, just asks us to note this assurance process and the findings in paragraph 4.1 and 4.2, to note the improvement plan, and to recommend that the paper is referred to Audit and Governance Committee, which is actually in line with standard procedure for inspection reports in the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Are there any comments from Cabinet members? No. Okay. I mean, we welcome the report, but I think it would be remiss of me if I didn't mention that the Health Secretary himself, on taking over the role last year, pointed out that the CQC was not fit for purpose. And while we will always recognise that there is improvements that we need to make, but also there were improvements in that system too that were required. And were we doing this review now, as opposed to right at the very, very beginning of that process last year, I think it would have been a different outcome. That withstanding, of course, we take on board all comments, and we did give rigorous feedback. I believe there were over 70 amendments to the report that we received, which we disagreed with. There were inaccuracies that were never corrected. And this is the kind of challenge that we face. But nevertheless, we continue to progress and improve, and it's good to see that we're taking it all very seriously in doing that. Right. So the Executive Scrutiny Board resolved to note the report. So nothing from that. Councillor Prosser, do you have any questions? Thank you. Okay, then we go to recommendation 2.1 to 2.3, to note the assurance process, note the improvement plan, and to recommend the paper is referred to Audit and Governance Committee. Are we all agreed? Superb. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 10, that is council tax, empty and unoccupied and second homes charges. I believe that I'm coming to Alison Parkin for this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report seeks changes to the council tax charges on empty and unoccupied properties and second homes within the city. The Local Government Act 2012 amended the Local Government Finance Act and also gave billing authorities discretion to levy an empty homes premium after dwellings have been empty and substantially unfurnished for at least 2 years. And Derby City Council chose to enact that discretionary power in 2013. The Levelling Up and Regeneration Act of 2023 passed in October, further enhanced the charging options for enabling billing authorities to reduce the minimum period for the implementation of the council tax premium for long-term empty properties from 2 years to 1 year. And it also enables billing authorities to introduce a council tax premium in respect of second homes. The gross estimated additional income contained within this report could generate additional council tax of over £1.6 million to the city, but this also comes with the additional benefit of bringing homes back into use. Appendix 1 of the report details the number of homes affected. So in terms of empty and unoccupied homes, there's 778, and second homes 179. A consultation exercise concluded that 65% were strongly supported the long-term empty homes subsidy, and 64% either supported or strongly supported the second homes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alison. Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Chair. Upon becoming a cabinet member all those years ago or 18 months ago, well, one of the first things I asked officers was to look at ways of bringing empty properties into use for accommodation. And whilst we're obviously going to get finance from these, but that's not the primary objective. The primary objective is and was to bring these properties back into use for accommodation. And I think with the new act, it's given us impetus to introduce this, and I welcome it.
Thank you for making that point, Councillor Khan. It's a very valid one. This isn't about making money, it's about opening up homes for people, isn't it? They shouldn't be sat there empty. And the faster that we can turn those around and bring them back into use, the better. Any other comments from Cabinet members? Councillor Swan.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Khan. I really recommend this. We all know that, 778 empty homes doesn't seem that many, but when you have an empty home in your ward and there are people living beside that particular empty home and they've got damp coming through from the house, they've got walls falling down, they've got unkept gardens, I believe that our communities would highly recommend this move for the city. Thank you.
Councillor Hazelgrave.
Just to say that although this will hopefully enable us to have access to unoccupied homes, because they'll be put on the market or they'll be actually used by people buying a house, if they choose not to, then they're paying a premium that we receive as council tax and can use in the general use for our citizens.
Thank you very much. So the Executive Scrutiny Board resolved to note the report. Nothing from there. Anything from you, Councillor Prosser?
Yeah, so obviously a number of these homes will be derelict or they'll be going through probate and therefore they'll be exempt from these charges. In the calculation at the end there, none of these exemptions are taken into account. So do we know roughly what the percentage of these properties will be exempt and what that amounts to financially? Because that's not actually in the report.
No, we don't have that. I don't have that information to hand, Councillor Prosser, but I think they're the minimum end of the scale in terms of the number of homes that we've identified in the report and based the calculation on.
Okay. If there's no other further questions, then we will look to the recommendations of 2.1 to 2.3. Are we all agreed? Okay, thank you. Item 11 is the sale of land at Grovebury Drive and the sale of land at Oregon Way. I believe that we're going to go to Emily for this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So, the Cabinet report is seeking authority to dispose of 2 small parcels of land at Grovebury Drive and Oregon Way. These are small pieces of land owned by the council that must be crossed to enable a much bigger area of land to be developed. On the open market, these parcels of land have very little value, but to the owner of the land to be developed, gaining control of the strip is critical for bringing forward development. In negotiating the sale of these land parcels to these special purchasers, the council has unique opportunities to achieve both a significant capital sum and to facilitate delivery of significant housing numbers, essential to delivering our housing allocations. Turning first to the land at Grovebury Drive, which sits within the Blaegreaves ward. The council land proposed to be disposed of is a small area of land of approximately 0.21 acres, which allows access to a larger portion of development land, which is entirely within South Derbyshire. This access point would allow 150 units to be developed. Those 150 would form part of a large development of 500 units, but with the majority of that 500 being accessed from a different access point within South Derbyshire. Delivering these units will contribute to the 6,000 units we require our neighbouring authorities to deliver in order to achieve the housing numbers that we are allocated to deliver. The proposal is to grant an option to purchase council land within 2 years of the date of the option at an agreed price subject to indexation. Under this arrangement, the council would be obliged to sell, but cannot compel the purchase. It's therefore noting that there is no absolute certainty that this sale would go ahead. It may take up to 2 years to complete, obtain the capital receipt, and will be subject to the developer obtaining planning permission. The second parcel of land is land off Oregon Way within Chaddeston East Ward. The small portion of council land measures approximately 1.3 acres. The development land, which is shown on the associated maps, will deliver approximately 215 residential units, plus a significant area of public open space. It's important to note that the land allocated for development was allocated as housing land in the 2017 local plan. It is not green wedge, and that is important to note. And the green wedge between the edge of the development land and Acorn Way would be retained. These 215 residential units will contribute to the 12,500 houses the council must deliver within the city boundary to meet assessed need. In this case, the proposal is a conditional sale of the council land, whereby the purchaser has 2 years to complete the sale. Again, then the purchaser is not compelled to complete if they do not obtain planning consent. And again, that means there is no certainty, and the process may take up to 2 years to complete and to obtain a capital receipt. Chair, there are 3 recommendations: to approve the sale of land at Groveby Drive, to approve the sale of land at Oregon Way, and to delegate authority to myself as Director of Corporate Governance, Property and Procurement, following consultation with the Cabinet Member for Governance and Finance and the Section 151 officer. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Emily. Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad that Emily pointed out that this is land that was allocated in a local plan 2017 for houses. I, fully expect that some people will be sort of in uproar about this development, but it is not green wedge. It was in the local plan since 2017. Nobody objected to it. Again, I stress that although the sort of money that we're going to get for the disposal of the land is far more than we could have achieved on the open market, but that again is not the primary concern. The primary concern is hundreds of houses will be built to go towards our housing numbers, and in the Groveby piece of land, it opens up for South Derbyshire, the houses behind that, for another 550 or 600 houses. And the one up at Acorn Way, that's 250 houses. So the money, yes, is welcome for the disposal, but the 600 or 700 houses are even more welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. I think it's all very, very important points to make. Our housing targets are impossible to achieve on our own without our partners on our borders. And while we understand completely that this adds pressure onto our services and our infrastructure, it's all part of what we have to do in order to meet those targets. We have more people than houses, and those people need homes. And in spite of the pressures it puts on our roads, ultimately the houses need to be built. What we need to do is pass on the pressure to those developers to make sure that they are providing extra infrastructure to accommodate these extra houses. Is there any other comments from Cabinet members? Councillor Swan.
Yeah, I'm not going to repeat what both you've said, Nadine, and Councillor Khan, and also the fact that it's not green wedge, which I think is extremely important. I think there have been developments in the past that we can certainly learn by, where 106 funding will put us at the front of that conversation with developers. And I think we use that learning to enable us to have those conversations early, to identify what are the risks to our local areas, and how can we start mitigating those as soon as there's a development or a plan for the future of Derby City. or our borders.
Thank you, Councillor Swan. Executive Scrutiny have a recommendation on this item. That is, the Executive Scrutiny Board resolved to recommend to Council Cabinet that any money raised from the sale of these parcels of lands will be ring-fenced to be spent within the relevant wards on matters determined through consultation with and taking input from the ward members, including but not limited to public open space, recreational area and park and play area improvements. Now, I can see the reasoning behind this recommendation, and I'm not unsympathetic to it, but however, it's my feeling, strong feeling, that that is what Section 106 money is there for. I think it would be a dangerous precedent to set for future capital receipts, and if there was something in those areas of development right now that there was a priority, then it would already be on the capital programme anyway. As I've already mentioned, Section 106, I did take some advice on this. The danger is that any schemes proposed in these wards for using this money trumps more urgent works in other communities. You know, and ultimately, there is huge pressures on us to make savings on treasury costs. And there's a 9 million pressure next year, and the capital receipts help us to reduce borrowing costs. So, you know, that is the purpose for passing on these parcels, you know, for selling off various different pieces of land or things that we own, buildings, etc., is those capital receipts that reduces our borrowing cost and therefore reducing our pressures, our treasury cost pressures. So, for that reason, I don't feel that we can accept that recommendation. And I hope that the rest of the Cabinet is in agreement with me. Councillor Khan?
Yeah, very quickly, Chair. I mean, in terms of precedent, let's not forget the amount of development that's taken place in the city centre is all Arboretum Ward. We didn't ask for that to be ring-fenced. It is there for a purpose, and that's the purpose today to say we'll ring-fence it for one ward. I think, you know, it's totally unacceptable.
Okay, for that reason, those reasons listed, then we won't, at this point, accept that recommendation from the Executive Scrutiny Board. Councillor Prosser, do you have any questions? Okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to the recommendations. It's 2.1 to 2. Well, it says 2.2 twice, so I'm assuming that would be 2.3. Yes. Okay, so 2.1 to 2.3 to approve the sale of land in both Grovebury Drive and Oregon Way and to delegate authority. Are we all agreed? Thank you very much. Then on to item 12, which is adult social care fees and charges 2025 to 26. Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Chair. So just to remind Cabinet that councils have a duty to ensure that there is a sustainable and affordable social housing care market, care market even locally. So as part of this role, the council has to establish fee levels for providers for the commissioned care that is delivered to meet a person's needs. So what has happened to ensure that the council is aware of the cost pressures affecting local care providers, there has been engagement with the independent sector during the corporate budget consultation about the fee increases. We do recognise that care providers have had pressures put in their budgets in relation to the national living wage increase and also the national insurance increase. And so with regard to the latter, we were able to, we received an extra £1 million just before Christmas in the settlement grant for adult social care on top of the increase, the overall social care grant from the government was £880 million, taking their contribution to care to 5.9 billion. We have received around £2 million of that money, but before Christmas received an extra 1 million. And we have passed that through directly to providers to assist them with the national insurance contributions increase, whilst recognising that it won't cover all of their costs. However, we've had to set the fee increases at what is an affordable level for the council. So the key inflationary proposals developed for the sector are for residential care and nursing homes. The proposed increase is 4.7% from April 2025, and there's another inflationary increase of up to 4.1% proposed for current home care packages, supported living placements, extra care services and existing direct payments. So I stress that this level of increase is what is affordable for the council. I do recognise that it may not be all that the care provider sector would have hoped for. Our intelligence is that this is a kind of a mid-range increase. It's in line with other councils in the East Midlands, probably a kind of mid-range, certainly not at the lower end of the increase that other councils are able to offer. So there's further information, obviously quite a lot of detail on this in the report, and the recommendations are that we just approve the proposals listed in 2.1 to 2.11. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Are there any questions or comments from Cabinet members? Okay. Item 12 from the Executive Scrutiny Board, they resolved to note the report, so nothing from there. Anything from yourself, Councillor Prosser?
I will. I'd have to declare an interest in that I sit on the board of a care facility. And last year I was quite shocked in that we took a vote as to whether we would continue to accept referrals because the cost of looking after people referred exceeded the cost of looking after them. This was quite a shock to me, and it's not an unusual situation from what I've discovered. This, therefore, going forward, really concerns me that we could be walking into a perfect storm as far as adult social care goes, because a lot of places are threatening to remove support for council-referred patients. So, for me, I am concerned that it's not enough, and that should this continue to fall behind the rising costs, particularly with the national insurance contributions and other costs this year, that we are going to really struggle in the future. And it's something that we need to be very careful about, and we need to head off before it becomes a real crisis. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Prosser. I think it's quite unique to have a sort of an inside view like that, and it's really helpful. Councillor Martin, did you want to come back on that? Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, Councillor Prosser, you know, I recognise your concerns. I have been speaking about the problems in providing care, the costs of providing care for people in Derby since I became the Cabinet member. I do recognise those concerns. I have met with representatives of the Derby Care Association to talk about this increase, and we have explained, and I will let perhaps Officer come in a moment to elaborate on perhaps why this is the most we can afford. I can assure you that, as I said, when we got the extra funding, we put it straight through to the providers because we absolutely recognise the situation that they are in. I think we also, as you will know, we have to recognise the scenario that the Derby City Council has also been in with respect to its own budget and has had to more than tighten its belt, not just this year, but in many previous years. I know and recognise that providers have been doing that too. So I really do recognise this as quite a serious situation. What I would say, though, is we have met with them, we have explained the council's position, we have passed through to them as much as we can, and we have also promised to act on any proposals that they put forward, practical ways we can help them with managing their budgets, whether it be ensuring there are no late payments, and that kind of thing, which we're working through at the moment. And these are suggestions they put forward, and I'm very open to meeting with them again to look at the progress of that and any other suggestions that they might put forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Gamal, did you want to come in then?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So we do, as a council, recognise the challenges that the adult social care market is experiencing in Derby as providers and also nationally, and have had good engagement meetings with all providers in order to outline the national position, the challenges for us as a council, and affordability in terms of where we are. And if you add the extra 1 million that's been put into the budget, the additional funding, it actually takes the uplift to an extra 1%. So it's kind of around 5% and 5.7% of resi. But we recognise the challenges on that. And as Councillor Martin outlines, we are meeting with the Derby Care Association to be upfront on what we can or cannot do, and we'll continue to listen and engage in that process.
Okay, thank you. It's a very fine balance, isn't it? So if there are no more... Oh, Gamal.
Chair, just thought one thing we've tried to outline to providers as well, which is important, is that the council prioritise adult social care. So our overall adult social care budget is around 91 million. And sometimes I think that gets lost in the conversation. So just emphasising that as well. Thank you, Chair.
Definitely worth reminding of us all, isn't it? 91 million is an awful lot of money. Absolutely. Okay. So if there's no further comments, then we will go to recommendations 2.1 to 2.11. Are we all agreed? Okay. Thank you very much for that. Item 13 is Our City, Our River, an update on Derby Riverside, and we'll go to Councillor Swan, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This paper seeks to provide Cabinet with an update on the Our City, Our River work programme, approved by Cabinet at their meeting in March 2023, to secure approval for the next phase of that work programme and to accept external funding required to enable the project to proceed. I'm sure we will all remember in this chamber Storm Babette in 2023, the impact on the city and the impact on our businesses, but also the impact on the council in terms of the long clean-up afterwards. So this paper sets out to, for the ambitions of our city to complete phase 2 of this project to increase our flood resilience and mitigation. Page 61 highlights the challenges but progressive work undertaken by Derby City councillors, officers and councillors to put the city in a position where it can proceed with this project. I think there's a bit of a delay on the paper because 2.3 talks about the EA having identified additional funding for us to do phase 2 of this project. I think what we can now reference is that we have been very successful in securing £43 million from the Labour government to enable us to continue to deliver this down to the Environment Agency through DEFRA. 43? 35, 43? 35. Oh, I just want to up it, don't I? I just want to keep upping it, the numbers, you know. I think we'll manage that with 30. Yeah. So 35 million. So this paper, to some extent, is a bit of a delay on the updated information, but we look forward to progressing with Our City, Our River project as a direct result of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Swan. Yeah, just to clarify, £35 million successfully secured for phase 2 of OCOR. I mean, you mentioned Storm Babette, but we really should also mention that because of phase 1 and the success of that, there were hundreds of homes that were saved from flooding during that storm. The majority of the storm that hit was in the phase 2 area, so that's why we recognise that it's so vital that we carry on, we keep progressing and pushing forwards. And I do also have to commend the Regen team on their work on not only securing this funding, but also on the land assembly, because that has been challenging, to say the least. You know, it always is. It always is. You know, but I know that they've worked particularly hard on that. And we are commended. You know, the EA really supports the work that we're doing on OCOR. They're very supportive of the fact that it is a regeneration programme, not just a flood defence programme. So incorporating green space into the city and, you know, park space into the city is going to be welcome for all of us. But at the same time, that space can be utilised and the river can do its thing when it needs to and swell. Yep, Councillor Swan.
Yeah, I think that's really important to note out. We know that a lot of our neighbours are desperate for flood mitigation funding, and the fact that Derby City has got both the reputation and the relationship to enable this to progress just demonstrates to some extent that there is great confidence in Derby to deliver.
Thank you for that. Councillor Swan. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and I think it's worth just taking a moment to reflect on how successful the phase 1 of the OCOR project has been. As it happens, that much of that project sits in Darley Ward, my own ward. That took place before I became a councillor for Darley Ward. I'm not claiming any credit for it whatsoever. But it really has, there are issues, you know, remaining with the level of flooding we've seen in recent years for some residents in the way that the floodplains work. But actually, without that work, we would have seen many, many houses flooded, many more people evacuated. We know there are broader issues about how you deal with flooding in terms of upstreaming and the issue of vegetation depletion, the impact of farming, etc. Nevertheless, we have been very fortunate in Derby to have this project, and it's brought other benefits. You know, it's not just about putting in the flood defences, is it? There was lots of work done in Darley Park to improve the facilities there, and I'm sure this will be the case in phase 2 to ensure that it provides better protection for the city and also improves some of the areas in the city of, you know, where the work is taking place. So overall, this is a really positive development for Derby. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Any further comments or questions? Yep, Paul?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And obviously, really welcome the news about OCOR. It is, as both Councillor Martin and Councillor Swan have said, you know, really important in terms of that investment and the you know, the carrying on of the great work that we're doing, and really good, a really good example of great partnership working between ourselves and the Environment Agency. I think it's important also, as has been alluded to, that it isn't just about flood defence. This is also about regeneration and supporting economic growth, and in particular, this facilitates the completion of Smart Park, which was always a challenge in terms of the risk to that site further downstream in Spondon, and probably even more significant, facilitates the ongoing development of Rolls-Royce at Rainsway and their significant expansion plans. So it supports some of our key partners in the city to support their growth aspirations and providing jobs for the people of this city. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. And of course, we mustn't forget that there is phase 3 to look forward to as well. So we are extremely grateful for to the government for providing the funding to protect the city centre itself. But importantly, phase 3 actually goes further downstream, doesn't it? And then it starts to address Rolls-Royce Rainsway and Smart Park down those areas as well. So the Executive Scrutiny Board resolved, firstly, number 1, to note the report, welcome the receipt of extra funding and encourage Council Cabinet to move forward with the works as quickly as possible. I mean, I'm very, very happy to accept that recommendation. There's certainly not going to be any dragging of feet. You know, the water is going to do what the water's going to do, so we've got to do what we've got to do as quickly as possible. And, you know, we've been waiting for this news for some time, so now we will be cracking on. And the second recommendation was to ask Council Cabinet to request a review of the climate change impact assessment process and the value and consistency of the roundels as provided for Council Cabinet reports, together with any proposals for change flowing from this review, and to ask for this to be reported to the Council's climate champions as well as the Cabinet and the Executive Scrutiny Board. So this is a recommendation relating more to the climate change impact assessment process, not to the paper itself, which is completely separate. I'm not entirely sure that that's... Yep, I'll pass over to Emily.
I can give just a little bit of background, Chair. This is an issue which Councillor Kerr and members of the Executive Scrutiny Board have been considering for a little while at Executive Scrutiny, and that the use of the roundel on our reports is probably slightly inconsistent, and she felt that some of the sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense if you have a good look at it in the context of each report. You look at it and the results of the roundel don't always say what you would expect or logically assume. And so therefore I think, having raised some concerns a number of times, it was felt that given this was a report very much centred on sort of climate and all of those things, it would be a sensible time to propose this.
Thank you for that clarity. Councillor Swan, what's your thought on this recommendation?
Yeah, I think Emily's pointed out it doesn't actually fit. It's been squoze into a paper, but I think if there's an opportunity to review something that's not working, then we should accept that recommendation.
Or rather to review whether it is working or not.
Yeah, to accept the review, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And is squoze a word? It is now. Okay. Then we're happy to absolutely, take a look at that, a closer look, and just make sure that it's consistent and that it's working in the way that it should. Okay, so we can accept that recommendation. Councillor Prosser, do you have any questions or comments? No? Okay, thank you. In that case, we will go to recommendations 2.1 to 2.3 to happily delegate authority to approve the delivery of the works and to note that the EA have identified additional funding. We all agreed? Marvellous, thank you.
Can I just say, I think we ought to thank Executive Scrutiny for bringing this to our attention so we can address that. It's a really good use of their time and their function.
Thank you, Councillor Heathergrave. Okay, we'll move on to item 14. That is determined school admissions arrangements for Derby City maintained and voluntary controlled schools 26 to 27. Councillor Heathergrave.
Thank you, Chair. This is basically an enabling item which needs to come to Cabinet every year for approval and make sure that stakeholders are consulted on the arrangements. Now, I think you'll find that the arrangements haven't changed in terms of the way they're operating from last year. There have been no substantive change, and in the consultation, it says no objections or comments relating to the proposed admission arrangements have been received during the consultation period. So I think it's an acceptance that what's working at the moment works well, and that we want to see it continue to work well under the present arrangements. I don't see anything controversial here, and I see no reason why we shouldn't accept in full the recommendations 2.1 to 2.3. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heathergrave. Any questions or comments from Cabinet? Executive Scrutiny resolved to note the report. Councillor Prosser? Thank you. Okay, recommendations then 2.1 to 2.3. Are we agreed? Thank you. Moving on to item 15, which is the Housing Revenue Account Business Plan 2025 to 2054. How old will I be then? I won't still be sat here, I don't think. Or maybe. Who knows? Never say never. Indeed. Councillor Khan would normally present this report, but as he's feeling unwell today, I will present it on his behalf. This report is the annual 30-year Housing Revenue Account Business Plan. The report seeks approval of the Housing Revenue Account Business Plan, specifically rent and service charge increase, management maintenance fee, and the HRA revenue budget and capital programme replacing 80 homes. The annual revenue income for the Housing Revenue Account is 73 million, of which 64 million is generated from dwellings, with the balance coming from non-dwelling rents and service charges. The income goes towards the management and maintenance of the 12,500 homes and service the borrowing for the Housing Revenue Account. The 25-26 HRA business plan also consists of a capital programme of 43 million, of which 27 million is for new builds and acquisitions. So the proposed rent increase is an increase of 2.7%. The proposed service charge increase is 1.7% for most service charges, with the exception of the following, which are currently subsidised, and even with these increases will continue to be subsidised, but will protect tenants from a high immediate increase. So 90 pence a week increase for grounds maintenance and communal cleaning. Utilities will be capped at £3 a week and includes water and gas and electricity, but not all three in all accommodation. And furniture packs will be frozen. Did you have anything to add, Councillor Khan, to that?
No, not really, Chair. I think we've tried to keep it as minimal as possible, but the raise is forced upon us, and it's not something that we considered lightly.
I think it almost comes back, it's a similar point to the social care rises. I mean, it's the same with nursery care and SEND care, where costs are going up, aren't they? Councillor Hazelgrave.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's important to know that the HRA is an entity which fosters social values and is of great social worth, particularly for those people who are less well off in our city. And I draw attention to the point that the HRA would have expected to lose an average of 182 social homes per year through right-to-buy legislation, but one of the early actions by the new Labour government, or relatively new Labour government, was to change right-to-buy conditions, and that will mean that fewer houses will be lost from the stock. So that's a really good move, and therefore reduces to a certain extent, and this will happen over time and will accumulate over time, this will increase the number availability of houses so that people will move on as tenants from one kind of accommodation to a smaller accommodation where that's more appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hazelgrave. And when we were first presented with this paper, it was explained to us about the HRA account and how finely balanced it is, and what, small changes can have a really big impact over a 30-year plan. And I'd invite Ian to just explain a little bit more about that, because it's a bit technical, but it's really important to understand that small changes, if we didn't do this, the whole thing could topple over, and that ultimately for our residents could be catastrophic.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Ian Fulliger, Acting Director for Housing and Regulatory Services. As you say, Chair, there are big sums involved, about £100 million investment a year, which equates to £3 billion over the 30-year life of the plan. So as you were saying, small changes at this point can have really significant changes or effects towards the end of the plan. As has already been pointed out, Chair, the changes to the right to buy have made a significant difference to the prosperity of the plan, but nevertheless, we are in discussions with our colleagues at Derby Homes, looking at where they can make significant savings because the plan is under pressure. And at this point in time, the plan has an operating surplus of over £40 million. Over the lifetime of the plan, that drops to about about £8 million, and the guidance from SIPFA, the government's accounting body, is that an absolute minimum for a housing revenue account of our size is £7.5 million. So over the life of the plan, we really do go down to the wire, as you say, Chair, reflecting that this is really quite a finely balanced plan now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. As responsible custodians of this revenue account, you know, we have to take the responsible decisions. The Executive Scrutiny Board resolved to note the report. Any comments? No, Councillor Prosser? Okay, thank you. If there's nothing else from Cabinet then, we will take recommendations 2.1 to 2.5. Are we all agreed? Okay, thank you very much. Item 16 is the Q3 Financial Monitoring Report, and I'll pass over to Councillor Kozlowski.
Thank you, Chair. So at the end of Q3, the Council was forecasting a pressure of 6.366 million on the revenue budget. Mitigations are outlined within the report. That forecasted pressure is a reduction of 2.591 million from Q2 and a 3.2 million movement from the Q1 position. The Council was reporting a forecast overspend of 9.6 million at the end of Q1. So much better news thanks to the efforts of our colleagues from across the Council. The key areas of the forecast outturn position for the Council-wide revenue budget are outlined in the report, and a detailed spreadsheet is at Appendix 5, detailing narratives for each significant variance. The Council continues to experience demand pressures within social care services and services relating to homelessness. These pressures are being mitigated by delivering underspend across other areas of the Council. Spend still needs to be scrutinised at officer spending and recruitment panels, and there are nearly £9 million of underspends offsetting the pressures being faced. In order to remain within budget and reduce the need to utilise reserves, all directorates need to continue with delivery of service mitigation plans. 100% of the Council's savings targets of 8.121 million for 24-25 is currently forecast to be achieved. And regarding capital, the capital expenditure forecast for 24-25 has been reviewed, and the updated full-year forecast is now at 187.7 million. Areas of significant slippage are contained in paragraph 4.4.3 of the report. And the Treasury Management forecast outturn for 24-25 is a net balanced position as at the 31st of December 24. The Council is in a need to borrow position. The cost of this borrowing has been forecast and is built into the Treasury Management budget. The Housing Revenue Account is forecast to contribute 650,000 into the Housing Revenue Account reserve as originally budgeted for. The Dedicated Schools Grant continues to face pressures on the high needs block. Q3 is forecasting a reduction to the in-year deficit of 1.856, resulting in a 6.767 million 24-25 in-year deficit. The statutory override is currently under review and in place until March 2026. That's my summary. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Kozlowski. It's indeed going in the right direction, but I think it's indicative that we're not resting on our laurels, and we have to continue to drive that down as much as possible, because otherwise the pressure is on our reserves, and that really reinforces the need for a responsible budget coming up, and for us to put money into those reserves so that we have that resilience. Are there any questions or comments by Cabinet members? Councillor Heselgrave.
Just one comment, really, that is to say thanks to all Cabinet members for overseeing all these efforts to achieve the savings as required. But particular thanks to all colleagues involved in that process at councillor level. And I know that it's far and wide, and I think it's a genuine expression of thanks from all the Cabinet to colleagues for doing that.
Thank you, Councillor Hazelgrave. But we'll also pass on our appreciation to our officers who continue to gatekeep and ensure that our financial spending does not get out of hand. So looking at the executive scrutiny recommendations, was resolved to note the report, so nothing significant there. Nothing from Councillor Prosser, in which case I will go to recommendations 2.1 to 2.2. Are we all in agreement? Lovely. Thank you very much. Then we move on to item 17, which is the medium-term financial plan 2025 to 26 and 2027 to 28. Councillor Kozlowski.
Thank you, Chair. Slightly longer introduction from me this time, as you might expect. So the MTFP report outlines the Council's budget proposals for the period 25-26 to 27-28. These proposals outline a balanced budget for 25-26 and an indicative balanced budget for 26-27, which is something we haven't been able to achieve since 2014-15, when the Council balanced across 3 years. It's not been achieved without taking difficult decisions. The Council is facing pressures of £39 million next year, which is far in excess of the resources it has available and requires the delivery of £10 million of savings. The savings outlined are to address the impact of demand pressures, inflationary costs, maintaining priority services and investing in the Council plan. The provisional finance settlement received on the 18th of December was welcome news for the sector, as it provided an overall increase of 6% rise in the core spending, aiming to address inflationary pressures and rising service demands. For Derby, the core spending power increased by £22.6 million, which is an increase of 8.6% and above sector average increase. This more favourable settlement does not reverse the austerity period faced by the sector over the past decade, as a result of which Derby has had to make in excess of £285 million savings. The provisional settlement has provided some welcome additional monies for Derby, particularly seen in the allocation of the recovery grant, where we received an award of £6.7 million. It was pleasing to see that the grant distribution favoured those authorities, like Derby, with high deprivation and a low council tax base, meaning we have a limited ability to raise additional revenue through council tax increases, a response to the lobbying of a fairer distribution of funding to those councils who have experienced the hardest financial challenges. The December 2024 budget report did not anticipate the full increases in funding, and this has resulted in additional resources of £8.6 million from that by which the budget was consulted on. This has enabled the Council to provide some further welcomed investment in services and, crucially, has also enabled the replenishment of reserves to provide some further financial resilience. A detailed summary of the changes are included in paragraph 4.3.3 of the report, but the headlines include investment into special educational needs and disability services, known as SEND services, providing a cultural recovery resource to support those partners facing significant financial challenges, responding to emerging pressures from Q3, with additional budget allocations to those areas where demand continues to grow, homelessness being one of them. Additional allocations for council tax support for those households facing financial hardship, investment into waste minimisation services, additional capital investment for a new depot. December's report also contained some significant areas of investment. £16 million into people services protecting our most vulnerable residents, £3 million into place services, including £200,000 into grounds maintenance and grass cutting, and the provision in the capital programme for a new crematorium. The Council will seek to minimise compulsory redundancies where possible. The proposals contained in this report will reduce the workforce by an estimated 95.3 full-time equivalent posts in 25-26 if implemented. This is unfortunately necessary to deliver the required savings to balance the budget and progress to financial sustainability over the medium term. The Council has been responsibly managing vacancy control over recent months. This means that the in-year overspend position has improved, as we've just heard, but also allows for the deletion of vacant posts to bridge the budget gap, reducing the need for redundancies. The Council operates a voluntary redundancy scheme and is confident that it can deliver the majority of the potential further reductions by these means. I wanted to mention the dedicated schools grant. On the 18th of December, when we received the provisional settlement, the Department for Education announced the dedicated schools grant, and the early years element of this funding has seen a significant increase due to the continued rollout of the extended early years offer. The high needs block has been increased in 25-26 by 7.8%. That's around about £4.6 million to £63 million in total. And reserves. The report details an assessment of the adequacy of reserves, which are detailed as part of the budget process. These demonstrate that the Council is able to set a balanced budget for 25-26 and indicative balanced budget for 26-27 with a plan to ensure its finances in the short term to medium term are on a sustainable basis. Contributions to reserves total £10.149 million in 25-26, with a total of £11.525 million over the medium term. This will mean the general fund balance for 25-26 will be estimated to be 3.85% of net revenue spend. This will still require further replenishment over the medium term. Any major unplanned or unbudgeted shock will potentially undermine the financial position of the Council. There is an aspiration to increase by 0.5% each year until we reach adequate levels. This will be reviewed further in the refresh of the medium-term financial strategy later in 2025. These planned contributions to reserves are essential to improve the financial resilience and sustainability of the Council. Council is required to consider the Section 25 report from the Section 151 officer, which is attached to Appendix 7. This details the adequacy of reserves and robustness of the estimates for the period 25-26 to 27-28. I wanted to mention council tax. This report includes proposals to increase council tax for 25-26 by the maximum 4.99%, utilising the 2.99% levy and using the flexibility to levy an additional 2% social care precept. The government, in its definition of core spending power for local government, assumes that councils will recommend the maximum increase to support service delivery. Derby is a low council tax council where 85% of properties are in Band A to C. This, by implication, means that any increase in council tax will raise less additional revenues than neighbouring higher tax-based authorities. The proposed council tax increase for 25-26 means that around 67% of Derby payers will not have to pay more than £1.30 a week more than they paid in 24-25. The increase will be mitigated for a number of properties who are in receipt of full or partial council tax support. We have invested an additional £200,000 into supporting the most financially vulnerable households suffering with hardship. Capital programme. Despite the current financial constraints, the Council retains a capital ambition for the city which delivers across themes such as economic regeneration, health and well-being, economic vibrancy, diversification and skills, job creation and the development of the city's cultural offer. The capital programme totals 407.019 million over the next 3 years. 273.233 million general fund and 133.786 million HRA. This programme is ambitious and will have a major positive impact for the city. So major new projects for 2025 and 26 and beyond include a new depot incorporating additional highways capacity, a new crematorium, the remodelling and reopening of the Guildhall, completion of the Eastern Gateway and investment into the small children's home accommodation strategy. And just briefly, the Council carried out a detailed consultation exercise between 18th of December and 24 to 17th of January 25 with councillors, key stakeholder groups, members of the public, trade unions and the business community. Further details of the consultation process and feedback are included in Appendix 9. That's the end of my introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kozlowski. There's so much to unpack and to digest in that, isn't there? I mean, obviously, the initial budget proposal came before Christmas, but this that we are presenting to full council is significantly different, thanks to the settlement from government. You know, we had some nuggets of good news in our first proposal, but to be able to have an extra 8.6 beyond that we had anticipated has meant that we were able to reset and reset the balance and start again from a place that we know as we move forward, if we continue to act responsibly, we will be in a securer position going forward. That doesn't mean that there aren't still savings that we have to make, and it doesn't mean that there aren't still sacrifices that we have to make, and we certainly, you know, can't be frivolous and go on a spending spree. An awful lot of the funding that came was already earmarked in various different ways, and number one in importance is, as you said, Councillor Kozlowski, is our resilience. And it's a word that I've come back to time and again because I believe in the last year when we were still in opposition in 2023, in the last budget of the previous administration, I asked that question, where is your resilience? Because there were barely any reserves left. You know, the responsible decisions weren't being taken, and this is what we've done. But it's astounding to hear that it was 2014-15 since we were last able to indicatively balance a budget for more than just the coming year. So to be able to suggest that as of this snapshot in time, we can balance that budget for 2 years is incredible, absolutely incredible. So there's just a couple of things that I wanted to highlight myself. You mentioned our ambition to increase the reserves by 0.5% year on year. They currently stand at around 3.85%. That is at the lower end of the recommendation, which is between 3 and 5%. Now, if we have the ambition at least to increase that by 0.5%, you know, we would look to be over 4% next year's budget, and then the year after 4.5%. Where we can find ourselves to be in a place where we do have that resilience, we do have that wiggle room to be able to bounce back should there be any financial shocks to the city. But it also demonstrates that you know, we're also listening to the public, we're also looking at frontline services, we're looking at the pressures on the council, and we're allocating funds. You know, we're not holding on to the purse strings. We're striking a sensible balance, I believe, between spending and saving. I just wanted to point out a couple of the extra additions to this recommended budget since the settlement that we've able to put in place that are in my portfolio. That's the portfolio of the city centre, regeneration, culture, tourism. So a cultural recovery pot, you know, that's not something that we were in a position to be able to do initially. But I'm really relieved that we all understood the urgency of the challenges facing our cultural partners across the city. And certainly the Cabinet and the wider Labour group were very, very vocal in raising our support and unanimously giving support to our to our cultural partners. So a cultural recovery pot means that those partners will be able to bid in for support to help them to bridge their gaps that they're finding, their financial gaps that they're finding at the moment. That's to help them. That is not that we will be able to resolve them completely, and we will obviously be able to have to work closely with those partners to understand their financial position going forwards. But you know, that's something that we've been doing for quite some time, and we will talk in detail with those partners to explain the finer details. Something else that we have identified, which is of significant importance, is a new neighbourhood officer, neighbourhood manager rather, which is a post that was removed by the previous administration because that's a neighbourhood manager that is specifically focused on the city centre. I think we've all recognised that the city centre needs that convener, that person that is able to bring together safety issues, the cleanliness issues, the vibrancy issues, the cultural issues, the footfall issues, the economy issues, you know, all of these things, nighttime economy as well, especially, are all things that they all need attention. They all need, there's lots of people doing lots of pockets of things around the city, but to have one person here at the council focused on bringing them and convening those all together to make sure that our partners and ourselves are all working together at the highest level. We're all pulling together with in unity. There's no duplication happening, and we're all doing the best for the city centre. In this absolutely vital time right now where, you know, business needs the support, but we've got all of these wonderful things coming online this year and beyond. So we feel that this position is a vital one for us right now. We've also put some extra funding into the initial this year's launch of the Market Hall. And this would have been a pressure had we not put this extra resource in. So we could have found ourselves entering the next financial year and then immediately being overspent because, you know, these issues come along. What we've tried to do is anticipate some of those pressures so that does not happen. You know, the Market Hall opens in spring this year. It's something widely anticipated. We've waited a long time. We've made sure that we've got it as right as we possibly can, and we only get one chance to relaunch and reopen that Market Hall. One chance to open the doors, welcome everybody in and say, this is the difference that it's made and this is what the new Market Hall means to the city, and this is what it provides to you. We need the extra resource in that opening year to make sure that, you know, we keep getting people through that door and that we get it right first time. So those are just some of the highlights in my portfolio. I wanted to open this up to Cabinet members to be able to go over your own portfolios and where we've been able to see the improvements. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think, thank you for letting me just speak for a few moments on adult social care and health, which is the biggest budget of the council, £122 million in total for next year. There are issues around the spend in adult social care, which we do acknowledge. So I think it's important, if with your permission, I'll just say a few words on it. I mean, as you've just said, and as you've rightly outlined, we have been able to stabilise, well, we worked very hard to stabilise the council's budget responsibly, trying to balance up all the very many strong and competing demands. But in the end, I think the thing that has got us, well, we think we got over the line, but I think the thing that has taken us a bit beyond that line and into a better path for the future is the fact that the government's core spending has increased council's core spending this year by 6.8%. Well, that's for 24-25. That's in addition to the, as I mentioned previously, that's £880 million extra going to the social care grant, taking that to 5.9 billion. And this year, and I'm really pleased to be able to add, because it's only been finalised this very morning, so I'll just say a bit more about this in 1 second, if that's okay, is that we do have an above inflationary increase to the public health grant this year from the government. So just very quickly, if I may, because I know this is not perhaps always of most immediate interest to members of the public generally, but it is absolutely vital for the council's budget. So, as I've stated previously in previous reports, we do recognise we need to improve adult care and we need to improve efficiency in the delivery of services. So there's £3.5 million of savings in this budget from adult social care, which we are on track to deliver at the moment. And with the reorganisation savings there, that takes that to £4 million. But nevertheless, given the extra draw on services, money has had to go back into adult social care to deal with all the pressures. And of course, a lot of that money is coming from this extra government funding and also to the social care precept in the council tax, which the people of Derby pay for the care of those people who need it. And we are very grateful and we do recognise that payment from people of Derby. I think it's worth stating that every year now, for some years, they have been paying a social care precept just to keep that adult social care afloat. So we're putting in £13.7 million, and in addition to that, £1.8 million for the inflationary uplift. Some of that, obviously, it will go towards the fee increases that I mentioned earlier. And then, of course, as I did mention earlier, there's a £1 million extra that we're also giving to providers, which came in the settlement to try and help them with the national insurance cost. And on the public health grant settlement, I'm pleased to be able to say that we have now received an above inflationary increase of 5.49% to the public health budget. And combined with the extra grant that we received in Q4 this year, this means that we'll have almost an extra £1.8 million to spend in public health next year. So that is significant ring-fence money for public health, and we're very grateful to the government for that extra money. We all know that there are huge health inequalities and health issues within Derby, and public health is a key vehicle for dealing with some of those issues. So what that money will do, which, as I say, has just been announced today, so it's new, it's not necessarily all captured in the current budget report, is that it will enable us to put public health on a more sustainable footing, and we will be able to fund some additional activity with it. Thank you.
Superb, great news. Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Heselgrave.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to talk about the Direct Schools grant, Devolved Schools grant, which is a considerable amount of money and is the way the government invests in the future of this city, because clearly it relates to the education of our toddlers, little ones, children and young people. The DSG is divided into 4 blocks: the schools block, the central school services block, the high needs block and the early years block. This coming financial year, 3 specific grants have been subsumed into the schools block base, namely the 24 to 25 Teachers Pay Additional Grant, Teachers Pensions Employer Contributions Grant, and Core Schools Budget Grant. The inclusion of the above grants into the schools block for 25 to 26 has led to an increase of 8.5% in this specific pot. I'm happy to report that at the recent schools forum between school representatives and officers of the council, where how the DSG will be devolved to schools in terms of individual pupils and their budgets, was discussed and illustrated on an individual schools basis, and those from schools present were very pleased with their settlements. I think those schools that weren't at the meeting or not represented have also been pleasantly surprised by the amount. I'm not saying that they're, in a really healthy situation. School budgets are really, really tight all the time, but this has been a tremendous help. There's been a significant increase in early years. Sorry, I should have mentioned also that the amount of money that schools have been devolved so far doesn't take into account what will be provided also for pupil premium pupils and pupil premium plus pupils for 25-26, as those figures have not yet been announced. Pardon? So, more monies will be allocated to our schools when this has been made clear. And present figures for this, for example, are primary school, each primary school pupil on free school meals will attract £1,480. A secondary pupil on free school meals will attract £1,050. Looked after children, £2,570. Children who have ceased to be looked after, the same figure, and service children, £340. So most schools, or those schools with the most deprived children, will get a further, no doubt, very welcome uplift in their school budget. There's been a significant increase in early years funding of £9.946 million to reflect the Labour government's promised access at younger ages to school nurseries, so that our little ones are helped by professionals and their parents in partnership to get them school ready. The high needs block funding is provided by central government to enable our schools of all categories to support the needs of children and young people with special educational needs. This has increased from £59,825,000 to £64,529 million, which is an increase of £4.7 million. As councillors, we are aware our approach to this support and how and where it is delivered is in a process of transformation. Derby is ensuring that those young people are learning in the best places, and with that in mind, it is essential that the budget is flexible enough to adapt to the various cohorts changes while practice and delivery methods are embedded. Almost all recipient organisations delivering support to SEND or EHCP pupils have seen an uplift in real terms for 25-26. However, independent special schools have seen a reduction in their allocation. As inherent in the transformation process, our young people are being supported where best in mainstream settings closer to home. So I hope that gives a flavour of what's been happening and how that translates into what's happening for young people on the ground in their schools in terms of the money that's been devolved by government. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hesselgrave. Any other comments from Cabinet members? Councillor Anwaha?
Thank you, Chair. Well, as we're well aware, we've had what has been called a clean break from cuts in terms of the settlements we've had from the government, and that has enabled us to go back after listening to our residents to add more fillip, as it were, to some of the offerings that we provide. I'm happy that we're able to add more £200,000 into grass cutting, which means we're able to get not just the people to help maintain our green spaces more effectively, but also equipment. And with the turn of the weather these days, and with it being more wetter, is that a phrase? With it being wetter for longer, we're able to invest in machinery that can cut in those conditions. So that that is one aspect of our delivery. I'm happy that we can improve on, and of course we're looking forward to a new crematorium and a new depot, especially with the fact that we're now having to start working on processing or removing food waste. We do need that investment, and we're able to meet that responsibility or those responsibilities for our residents. And of course, tied to waste removal and processing is investment in waste minimization officers, which we're proposing. And I'm just happy that whilst we're taking responsible decisions, making sure that we have enough in our reserves to ensure that we're resilient, we're also able to deliver on some of our front-facing services because we don't have the option of not delivering for the people of Derby. And so I do welcome this report, and I'm happy that we have the opportunity to do a lot more for Derby.
Thank you, Councillor Nwaha. And those waste minimisation officers are going to be specifically focused on some of the challenges on our doorsteps, which are bins on streets, and obviously the rising fly tipping issues that is happening across the country. Councillor Chambers.
Did you forget my name then? Just a short one from me. I just want to reiterate some of what Kathy said on council tax, because it can be a contentious subject. 85% of properties are A to C, 51% council tax band A, 67% will get an increase of £1.30 per week. I'm not going to say that's not much, because it is to everybody. However, as putting the £200,000 into the council tax hardship fund, which is separate to the council tax support fund, that's us recognising that families who fall just outside of the council tax support fund need support, and that's what was at the forefront of our mind at that point. Whilst we want to be resilient as a council, we want to work towards enabling residents, especially the most vulnerable, being more resilient in the future too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. Any more comments from Cabinet members? Okay. The Executive Scrutiny Board resolved to note the report. Is there anything from Councillor Prosser? No. Thank you. Councillor Nwaha, I understand you have an amendment to the budget.
Yes, Chair. And this is with regards to the Sundays, the reversal, I should say, of...
Sorry, Councillor Nwaha, can we pass around the amendment first of all, please, just so that everyone has sight of it?
Sorry, I've only brought limited printed copies.
Would you like to pass one to Councillor Prosser?
Yeah. I'll just put on the screen as well.
Thank you for pausing there, Councillor Nwaha. Please continue.
Thank you, Chair. This amendment is with regards to removing the proposed saving of reintroduction of the booking system at Household Waste Recycling Centre on Sundays. One of the manifesto pledges made by this labour group was to offer a variety of bookable and open sessions at Rainsway Household Waste and Recycling Centre. To that end, we introduced the removal of a need to pre-book visits to HWRC on Sundays. Cabinet agreed to keep this scheme under review. We have now completed the first review, and following further customer surveys on the 12th of January and the 2nd of February at Rainsway, I can confirm that we intend to renew this scheme. Chair, it's important to note that since the introduction of this scheme, the number of people visiting the recycling center has increased, with a concurrent increase in the level of recycling in the city. There has also been, as previously noted, an increase in the proposed cost of running this scheme. However, I would like to remind us all that this Labour administration is not just looking at people as mere statistics, but is invested in delivering services that will have a positive impact on the lives of our residents. After all, having to fund more recycled waste is a positive challenge to have. It would be pertinent to remind the public that the booking system was introduced by the Conservative administration during COVID to control the flow of people to the site in a safe manner. The effects of this was that recycling rates and numbers of visitors to the site fell. Their decision to keep the booking system post-COVID meant that our city recycling rates have remained low, and while visits and queuing have been controlled, the numbers remained lower. Our decision, on the other hand, has seen the number of visitors on a Sunday almost doubled, with 16% more waste collected. And as I mentioned earlier, having more waste to recycle is, again, a positive challenge, because that means people are taking up the message and the need to recycle a lot more in the city. As I mentioned earlier, we carried out 2 comprehensive customer surveys at Rainsway, where there was an overwhelming support from residents using the service on a Sunday. These residents were from all over Derby, representing our different wards, including one resident who lives with dyslexia, who had found it very frustrating to have to book a visit to Rainsway before now. We also had input from people online who were very supportive of the scheme. One such person said, "Just make it like it used to be. Turn up, drop off, and go." In terms of our survey, 45.8% of respondents wanted to keep the sessions open all week. 33.3% wanted a combination of booked sessions throughout the week and open sessions on Sundays, while 20.8% wanted a return to booking-only sessions. This shows that about 80% of the respondents were in favor of maintaining the current scheme. Now, that is an overwhelming yes by the people of Derby. In our efforts to provide a well-rounded solution to waste minimization and disposal, you will note that in addition to this scheme, we are also proposing the employment of 2 more waste minimization officers, and we'll be stepping up our enforcement activities, as well as rolling out free bulky waste voucher scheme all over Derby. Now, these will all form part of our waste minimization strategy, because we recognize that we're not just going to use one element to fix the issues that are not just happening in Derby, but all over the UK. And may I add that when you look at the incidence of, say, fly tipping, for instance, Derby does not feature in the top 50 or even top cities. So whilst we have that challenge, we are not. It's not terrible here, and we're hoping to, by using all these elements at our disposal, to keep it under control. I would like to clarify that this amendment has come at this time because we were going through a process of 1, consulting with the public, 2, considering the report, and 3, considering our financial position. Having now done these, I am proposing this budget amendment, which seeks to remove the proposed saving of reintroduction of the booking system at the Household Waste Recycling Centre on Sundays. There were some drawbacks noted in the January report that we will address going forward, and we will, of course, continue to monitor this scheme throughout the year, and specifically on Sundays, to ensure we have a fuller, better picture of its effects on the delivery of our waste disposal and minimization strategy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Nwaha. I think that's a really important thing that you mentioned, is that we always said that we would consider the report that came to Cabinet in January, we would consider our financial position, and we would consider the opinions of our residents. and we have taken the time to do all of those things. The report showed a mixture of advantages and what they called disadvantages of having free sessions on a Sunday. Positively, the free sessions provide more choice, and that is the overwhelming message we got when we went to Rainsway and we listened to members of the public who were there, because of that choice. The recycling levels were maintained, and there were no concerns around the queuing. It's never, it's never been an issue that it may have been anticipated. Some of those things that you were mentioned in the report, like it's been limited, the plans to permanently open a shop, a reusable shop. That's a big ambition of ours, and we've spoken to officers, and we're confident that we can do that 6 days a week. So it's, if the issue with planning is that Sundays could cause those queuing issues to back up, then that recycling shop will open Monday to Saturday, and we'll still be able to do that. So, and like you said, what a positive challenge to have that actually your recycling rates are up. And, when we consider what we're spending our money on in the budget, choice and options and improving our recycling rates and improving service for our residents has got to be key there. There were other things in that report that really could not, be defined as being solely attributed to the Sunday open, free from bookings issues. And I think that by proposing that we extend the free bookings on Sundays for a longer period means that we can continue to review and we can get a full holistic year-round picture. After all, the report that was brought to January only gave us 6 months. And that was it's a seasonal thing, isn't it? There is more rubbish collected in the summer than in the winter. So, we really, really cannot get a full picture until we have a whole year of the report. And we definitely, absolutely 100% need more detail, more figures, more data in that report going forwards. But resoundingly and overwhelmingly, we listened to the public. I'm going to read out just a couple of the quotes that we had. One that was online after we shared that we'd been to Rainsway said that I prefer the Sunday free bookings because our life doesn't always work to timed plans. I get why some prefer bookings and time slots, so why not have 3 or 4 days free and the rest bookable? So, there was a lot of variety on what people preferred, but as you said, 80%, all in all, wanted some kind of choice between bookings and non-bookings. And importantly as well, we gathered information about where people were from. There was some assumptions made that the increased waste being collected was coming from outside of the city boundary, but actually almost every single person we spoke to was from within the city. Some of the ones I'll read out to you, the first one from Chaddesden, it's the only day I can make it, please keep it open free from bookings. From Blaegreaves, I'd be very annoyed if you stop, I've had to go to Burton 3 times in the past. From Spondon, keep it free on Sundays, I just like to turn up. And one that I spoke to specifically, one lady said, we have young children and a lot of waste. So we do go over the allowed booking limits, which is 12 visits per year when you're booking. So they need that flexibility of bookings free on Sundays to get rid of their additional waste. And we do have to question, if they didn't have that, the waste is building up, where is it going? And that person was based actually in the city centre. So I'll leave that there because otherwise I'll just carry on reading out quotes. But I'll pass over to my cabinet members who are going to offer a different voice. Councillor Swan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, it was a very cold day down at the dump, but there was lots of good feedback. And certainly I spoke to one who actually was Chellaston, and she was a nurse. She does shifts, and she's often on call out. So for her, the opening on Sunday was an absolute must because of the flexibility that it gave her. But I was astounded with people coming from all across the community in Middleover, Derby, Shelton Lark, Chellaston, etc., etc., etc. I mean, there were people who said, can we just have no booking 7 days a week? Well, we know that that's not practical, but they were there on a Sunday because there was no bookings. One was an elderly couple who said, all that malarkey online, we don't have a computer. So Sundays was the day that they could arrive at the tip. So yeah, I'm going to pass on to somebody else now.
Councillor Khan. I can't remember who was next.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, as an administration, as an authority, we're sort of duty-bound to look after the citizens of our great city and provide services to them that they need in the best possible way we can. And certainly judging from the comments from my ward, every person I spoke to, they said it's a great idea because it gives them the flexibility of going there. Even some people who don't have transport are able to ask their relative, friend, neighbour to take them there because they don't have to put onus on whoever is doing them a favour to say you have to go at such and such time. So this gives them the benefit of saying to a friend, neighbour, relative, look, we can go on a Sunday, just come and help us when you can.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelgrave.
Yeah, just procedurally, in case we need it, I will second formally this motion. Yeah? Or this amendment. And now I will not reserve my right to speak, because I'm going to speak. So, quite a few comments that I got. One person from Darley Ward talked about the limit of 12 visits over the year isn't enough, so they're going to using Sundays. So that's really good. Another person said just simply, and they're from Middleover, please keep it free on Sunday. And they didn't elaborate as to why they particularly wanted it. Another person from Alistree says they really like the non-booking on a Sunday. One person says it needs to be more than 12 times a year that you can book, so keep it open. That's an Arboretum resident, yeah. And then there were slots are too popular at peak times. We can come in the week as retired, not non-bookable, more flexibility. That's an Alistree resident. And I know two people spoke to me along the same lines but differently. One person says, work restricts me through the week, no bookings. And another guy turned up and he initially didn't want to speak. And then my very limited Polish enabled me to understand that he works all the time during the week that the recycling centre is open. So he can't get during the week, so he has to come at the weekend. And he was from Chaddesden. One of them was, anyway, I can't remember which. Another person just simply from Abbey Ward, nice and straightforward, an Abbey resident. We come on Sunday as we don't need to book. And finally, Alistree resident, again echoing this working all week and having no flexibility. Please keep up, and I work all week.
Thank you, Councillor Hazelgrave. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Yes, I support this amendment to the budget, which we've needed to bring as an amendment because we obviously had, when we went down to speak to the people at the tip, at the Rainsway, I should say, recycling centre, commonly known as the tip, I think. So, yes, we all went down there, we spoke to people, it was really interesting. I think it's the sort of kind of thing that councillors should do more of, just go to speak directly to people using the services. And, when you look at the results we've got here, I honestly think that this is a very important amendment to bring, because this is a service that's open to all people in Derby, and the costs of it are far outweighed by the benefits. And I think it's common sense to give people a choice here. And I think it's a reasonable service office from the people of Derby. And I spoke to people from all across the city as well. And the main message I had was, you know, give us the choice, keep it open on the Sunday. It's just it gives them that flexibility, and it means that people who occasionally need to go more than 12 times a year can, and that people who work all week, frankly, do not have time to spend time on a computer booking the system. They just want to turn up when they've got the time available. So, absolutely, I do support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Yeah, and you make some really valid points. Having just moved house myself, I've never used Rainsway Tip for years, but over the last couple of months, I've been on Sundays several times, you know, just because I'm having to downsize. So, you know, these things happen in our lives. And as, you know, the person who's mentioned online, you know, life happens and it can't always be confined by time slots, and you just need to be able to turn up to something and have that flexibility. So I certainly appreciated it. Councillor Kozlowski.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a brief one for me. So when we were at the tip and also talking to family and friends, people really do appreciate that choice. I think what was a good thing about going to the tip and speaking to people there and then, it wasn't a party political thing in any way. The people we spoke to will be of all different political persuasions. We didn't ask. We presumed that there will be. And they spoke freely. They're from across the city. So I think it's a good amendment that will positively impact everybody in this city. Even if they never go, they can. And they've got that choice. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kozlowski. Councillor Chambers.
Yeah, I'm just going to reiterate a little bit of what Alison said. I mean, I loved it, to be fair. I'm a massive advocate of going out and talking to the people. People don't engage in consultations, or very few do. So when we do have a bus lane reviewer, etc., I like to go out and talk to everyone in that vicinity. So I think it was really a really good exercise, and I'd like to see us do more of that on more things, because I think it's really important. I think you get more feedback and more generalised feedback when you go out. So yeah, the overriding message we got, or I got when I was talking to people, was choice and flexibility. And again, from all parts of the city, but it was that resounding choice and flexibility. Even though it is just the Sunday, they've got that choice. And I'm just going to read one I got online, actually. So he's put, the system you have right now is perfect. Bookings Monday to Saturday mean the road system isn't overwhelmed and the businesses nearby can still get customers and deliveries. No bookings on Sundays means, yes, a bit of queuing, but freedom for people to turn up on a whim. Those who have more to get rid of than the 12 tips would allow per year, it's less stressful, and for those digitally excluded, it's a lot easier. He runs his mum's house and he's a carer for his mum and his own house. And he says, I doubt I'm the only carer in Derby dealing with keeping two homes and what that kind of brings in terms of two gardens, lots of stuff to get rid of. So, yeah, positive feedback from him as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. And just on going back to that report in January, you know, 4.7 of that report talked about the ANPR data showing, you know, more visits than necessary, kind of thing. But you know, again, we've been speaking to officers, and we're confident that we could use the ANPR better to make sure that, you know, if there are excess visits, and as we've heard today, some of them are genuine excess visits. But, you know, abuse of the site, we can absolutely, you know, work harder on and make sure that we can tweak and fine-tune that going forward. So I really, it feels like there is overwhelming acceptance for this amendment. I recognise that this is controversial, and, you know, not everyone in the council chamber is going to welcome it, but I think that every councillor should always listen to the public. That is what we've done, and I hope that that is what we've proved today, is that we've listened and we've acted. So, can I ask, is everyone in support of the amendment to the paper? Okay, that's unanimous. Therefore, I will go to recommendation, keep turning the pages, recommendations 2.1 to 2.2.5 in the paper. Are we all agreed? Do we recommend the MTFP to full council? Thank you very much, Cabinet. We're getting there. Item 18 of 532 items. This is the council plan, 2025 to 28, and I'm introducing this item. The council remains ambitious for Derby, despite the financial challenges being faced by the local government sector. This report presents Cabinet with an updated council plan 2025 to 28 for approval, which sets out our priority themes and outcomes over the next 3 years and should be read alongside our MTFP. Findings from consultation are shown at paragraph 4.8, including specific feedback received through the Let's Talk Derby public survey, discussions with members of the Derby Partnership Board, local businesses, and our equality groups, such as Voices in Action, 60+ Forum, and the Access Hub. Key changes in the refreshed council plan include a new mission statement, and that statement is, "Together, we're building a Derby to be proud of." Renaming the Resilient City as an Inclusive City. Renaming Working Smarter as Connected Council. And updated areas of focus and outcomes for all council plan themes. The draft plan is shown in Appendix 3. A designed version will be available for full council. The recommendations from 2.1 to 2.6 are to consider and note the outcomes of the plan, to note the draft equality impact assessment attached, to approve the plan, refer the draft council plan to council for approval alongside the MTFP, to delegate authority to myself and the Chief Executive to approve any final amendments, and to note that the annual delivery plan will be prepared to underpin our council plan and show the actions, milestones and measures of success. Do I have any questions or comments from Cabinet members? No, you're all absolutely blown away by our new plan. Speechless. Thank you. Just let me find the Exec Scrutiny Board. Item 18, resolved to note the report. And we have no opposition members in the chamber. So that means I can move swiftly on. Oh, beg your pardon, Paul.
Just very quickly, Chair, and obviously appreciate the comments that you've made. Can I just thank Heather for the great leadership that she's shown on bringing the plan to fruition. She's done some really great work in the background, working with partners. So a big thank you to Heather for the work that she's done on this, and obviously all the team. But I want a particular thanks to Heather for the great work she's done. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Paul. Yes, and our thanks from the Cabinet too, Heather. You've taken on board our desire to deeply consult, and you know that's really reflected in this paper. It's important that we bring our residents and businesses and partners along with us on the journey. So yeah, it was great, and I was a part of that leadership board across the city where we heard lots and lots of positive comments from those partners. So, recommendations 2.1 to 2.6, are we all in agreement? Thank you very much, Cabinet. Right, on to item 19. I've got papers coming out of my ears. That is compliance with contract and financial procedure rules, and I'm asking Councillor Kozlowski to present this report.
Thank you. There are two items for consideration in this report. Firstly, to bid for and the acceptance of around 300k capital funding from the Department of Education's Children's Home Capital Bid Programme to develop further children's homes in partnership with the Integrated Care Board. This will be to develop provision for children with complex mental health needs that have been or are at risk of being deprived of their liberty. These children are often present across various settings, including in Tier 4 mental health wards and secure accommodation settings. They may have similar needs and are often the same children moving through multiple teams and professionals from different parts of the state system. The bid is part of Derby's Children's Home Sufficiency and Accommodation Strategy, which aims to enable more children and young people to be closer to home, particularly for those with complex and challenging behaviour where there is insufficient local provision. If successful, the 300,000 DFE capital funding will be matched with 300,000 from the Council. That's outlined in section 4.1 of the paper. The paper proposes the delegation of authority to the Strategic Director of People Services and the Section 151 officer in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Children, Young People and Skills to add a new children's home for complex needs to the capital programme for circa £600,000 as appropriate, as outlined in section 4.1. The second consideration in this report is a voluntary ex-ante transparency notice, or VEET notice, to procure a new contract with Alpheus Environmental Limited in order to continue the provision of maintenance of the groundwater treatment plant at Pride Park for a 10-year contract, and to secure the provision of those services as outlined in section 4.2 of the report, and to approve the establishment of a sinking fund reserve and appropriate transfers to and from this reserve as appropriate for costs associated with the groundwater treatment plant as outlined within the report. Extending this contract to 10 years in length offers the Council benefits. It removes the cost of reprocurement in 5 years, offers greater cost certainty over a longer period by including a price change mechanism clause in the contract. For information, effective management and implementation by Alpheus Environmental since the commissioning of the plant have enabled both a 25% reduction in electricity costs and an 80% reduction in analytical and chemical costs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kozlowski. Are there any comments or questions from Cabinet members? No? Okay. Then we'll move to recommendations 2.1 to 2.5. Are we all agreed? Yeah. Thank you very much. Item 20 is the Q3 performance monitoring. This report presents performance highlights from October to December 2024 across a range of measures and milestones included in our Council delivery plan. As an administration, we're proud of the progress demonstrated in this report, including Green City. A bulky waste voucher scheme was piloted in Sinfin and Osmaston to support residents in need, allowing them to benefit from free bulky waste collection. This is now being extended to other areas through the neighbourhood boards. Yay, Sinfin and Osmaston. City of Growth. Primary and secondary school children from across Derby attended the first Derby Promise Festival of Ideas in November. The event gave young people the opportunity to experience a range of activities linked to climate action, green careers, and opportunities across Derby relating to STEAM. That's science, technology, engineering, arts, and maths. And of course, linked to our manifesto pledge, the Derby Promise, which is now getting regional renowned. Actually, the Mayor is now talking about an East Midlands promise. Resilient City. The Council has looked to address the city's unprecedented housing needs by redeveloping the Abbey Lodge facility, which offers families better quality accommodation. Families started moving into a new temporary housing provision just before Christmas. We also ran a successful pension credit awareness campaign for local pensioners, and my congratulations and gratitude go to Councillor Chambers, who all helped to orchestrate that pension credit awareness campaign. It was superbly attended and very much appreciated. Under Vibrant City, the excellent festive Derby offer attracted more visitors to the city centre than previous years. The Council also hosted a record-breaking pantomime at Derby Arena. Oh yes, we did. Working smarter, we continue to deliver financial savings as planned through the Delivery Board programmes And the council also implemented a new performance and risk system in the autumn to assist councillors and colleagues to maximise our use of data and insight. However, we're not complacent and we recognise further improvement is needed in some areas. Three areas identified for a performance review are sickness absence, the timeliness of the education, health and care plans, and children placed within 20 miles of the child's home address. Do I have any comments or questions from Cabinet members on the Q3 performance report? Anything you'd like to highlight from that report in your own portfolios? Councillor Hesselgrave.
No, I'd just like to say in general terms, it's such a good story that we're telling. And at the same time, we're looking at the areas that we're taking cognizance of the areas that we have are emerging risk or concern and trying to make sure we mitigate as much as possible the effect on residents and their families. So, it's a really good story to tell and we ought to be celebrating it more. That's all I want to say. And thanks to everyone who's actually helped us to get where we are and how we're going further and progressing even further.
Thank you, Councillor Hesselgrave. Councillor Swan.
Yeah, I just want to touch on the Derby Promise. I mean, to see both the council house and the arena filled with children and young people excited about a future was really eye-opening. But also, the fact that we are starting to already have those conversations with young people, particularly at the arena, where they're thinking about what their future career looks like, and the fact that there could be a career that involves the green economy. And for us as a city to start talking about that very early to young people, I think is extremely ambitious and relevant to the future of Derby and the future of children and young people. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Swan. And of course, the Climate Change Action Plan was refreshed in November. That's included in this Q3 report as well. I just wanted to mention the Rail Campus Derby, which I attended in October. Over 200 delegates and stakeholders in attendance there, and it was another excellent opportunity to put Derby on the map when it comes to rail, and to discuss further, the opportunities that Great British Rail, being based in Derby, are going to bring to the city. It was a joint effort between the City Council, the GBR transition team, EMCA and wider stakeholders, and it will become a key hub for the UK's rail industry and supporting collaboration across all of the sector. So, that was a really, really positive thing that happened under my portfolio. So with that, I will, for no other comments, I will take recommendations 2.1 to 2.3 to note the performance highlights, note the areas of ongoing and emerging threat in paragraph 4.6 to 410 and appendix 1, and to note the 3 areas recommended for a performance review based on the positions presented within the report. I think that they are really sensible, really important topic reviews that we do need to do a deeper dive into. Are we all in agreement? Lovely, thank you very much. I beg your pardon, I did neglect to refer to the Exec Scrutiny Board, but they did only resolve to note the report. I then move on to item 21, which is the East Midlands Combined County Authority approval of draft Adult Education's Functions Regulations 2025. Emily?
Thank you, Chair. Committee will note that in December 2023, the full council agreed to the creation of the East Midlands Combined County Authority, EMCA, which was officially established in February 2024 under the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act. The initial proposal included adult education functions, but these were deferred to be devolved through a later statutory instrument. Since then, EMCA has worked with the Department for Education to meet readiness criteria for transferring adult education powers. The draft Adult Education Functions Regulations 2025 proposed devolving the powers contained specifically within Section 101B of the Apprenticeship Skills, Children and Learning Act 2009 to EMCA from the Department for Education. And it's important to note that that is a devolving from the Department for Education and no ceding of powers from this authority to EMCA in this instance. These powers include the ability to fund new high-quality technical qualifications from August 2025. This will ensure that adult learners in the EMCA region have access to the same opportunities as those in other areas. To move forward, the Government requires consent from EMCA and the 4 constituent councils by mid-February 2025, and members are being asked to approve these proposals and grant authority to the Managing Director, the Chief Executive, to address any technical changes to the regulations. This will allow for the swift progress of the necessary parliamentary process. The recommendations are set out in recommendations 2.1 and 2.2.
Thank you, Emily. Do we have any questions or comments on this? Paul, sorry, Councillor Hazelgrave.
Just to say that this really is just a kind of way of making sure that it's an enabling item that helps us to subsume EMCA governance under our own regime. And I'd like to indicate that EMCA has recently started working with the council in a specific area, and those colleagues who work with school leavers, particularly those who are leaving care, and helping them. Something like £1 million is coming towards that, and it's working with businesses, obviously any input that's already existed in terms of education, in order to move on those people and make them more employable and less likely to become needs and actually make their way in society and be economically productive. So we're getting something out of it in terms of our people who we know and to treat as people with protected characteristics in terms of this council. And I know that EMCA is looking and in fact has agreed to the same position. So they've followed our lead, and I'm not saying it's the exclusive lead of our council, but other councils within the EMCA footprint.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, so if there's no other comments or questions, recommendations 2.1 to 2.2. I've done it again, because they're not here. Exec scrutiny, resolved to note the report. Recommendations 2.1 to 2.2. Do we all agree? Thank you very much. Item 22 is the exclusion of press and public. To consider a resolution to exclude the press and public during consideration of the following items. That under Section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting during discussion of the following items on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3, part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, and the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. That's item 23, the proposed development of the site at Blackmore Street, Derby, and 24, confidential compliance with contract and financial procedure rules. Do we all agree on the exclusion of the press and public? Okay.